The Lesser of Evils raid is done, or if you're watching this the day it comes out, almost done, and I want to go through the raid recap, how well I did, the changes I'm making to both my Worldeaters and Hierophants, if any, and then a section on officers, as well as some other thoughts I have on the raid, which should help you out. By the way, I want to mention that I am covering a lot here, so if you want to jump around to different sections, you can actually use the YouTube bar to do that. I'm showing an example here from an older video. Also, I'm recording this video twice because the first time I did it, there wasn't any audio. So if you do like this content, make sure you share it with other people so that if this helps you, it also helps them. I'm talking about a bunch of stuff, including builds and officers, so let's get into it. First of all, how well did I do in this raid? And the short answer was very well. I got 160 million points and only spent 10 coins, and I'll tell you where those 10 coins came from at the very end. And I did this because every time you hit a Hierophant target, which is the top level ones right here, you get some chests. And those chests drop repair tokens for the Worldeater. And every time you hit the Worldeater, you get other chests, and those chests give you tokens for the Hierophant. So if you're able to do enough targets to get a chest every 10 targets or so, you can actually keep going infinitely with just autoing, spending 0 coin whatsoever. And sure, I could have driven, or sure, I could have blitzed to get 600 million points. Oops, did I bring that up? But I didn't, so that's my thoughts on that. I actually really like the auto ability of this raid, and didn't even bother to drive a single 1201, and only drove a single 1200, didn't drive a 100 or 101 past the videos on the first day, because being able to just sit down or log on for an hour and then auto 12 targets of each type at the same time is how I personally prefer to play my raid. And we're going to see that come up, the matter of personal preference, as we do talk about builds. In terms of the Worldeater targets, I do want to mention my performance on these on auto. Just using my current fleet, which let's go ahead and go back to my base to take a look at this one, because I do have a ship in the refit yard right now, so I'm actually refitting one of my, or upgrading I should say, my Gale Worldeater is going from U3 to X1, so just keep that in mind with these numbers. Using my current fleet, which has a regular damage ship, a Gale ship, and that's the only one. The one that's refitting is the same build, a regular damage ship, and the flagship, which is built the same as the regular damage ones, except for it's missing an armor because someone didn't get enough from the Forsaken mission. I'll get to the flag build in a second. But using these ships with a steelhead screw, my average repair time on the level 100 is 26 minutes. Now sure, I could drive that, or I could probably use all 5 ships and do it for instant base repair, but I just want to auto a ton of them, and then log off, and then come back in 12 hours and do it all over again. The 101 is a little harder with only one Gale ship, that is 37 minutes, so something I actually did, if you look very carefully, is I stacked up. I did 50 sets so far, maybe 51, but I also have 20 of the level 100 targets stacked up right now because I just got more tokens from those. I kept doing those when I had extra stuff, and then only did a level 100 for every time I did a 1200 and 1201 with my Hierophant, or Elephant as we've all been calling it. So that's generally how I did in these Worldeater targets. I like the targets for the most respect. I think that getting the X1 UAV chain count will unlock some more possibilities. I think the chain count, or the ability to chain, really rewards effective driving. If I could change one thing about these targets, one, I would have Gales not shoot at missiles and have that happen that way since the VXP target. But other than that, because whatever, it's fine, I take less damage, I would avoid having the pop-ups happen in the target as much. I've always found those a little annoying with the Scourge targets. So there's my Worldeater and Worldeater performance, but let's talk about the flag build. A lot of you who are on Discord may have been noticing that Billy, which, by the way, great, thanks Billy, I appreciate him sharing all this stuff, it's very helpful to people in the community. He's sharing some really wonky builds, and a lot of people have been asking me about those, and maybe other people have come up with them independently. The first thing is the flagship. If you look at the design mode for the regular ship, it has 180 million armor, versus if I pull up the flagship over here, you'll see that it has 200 million armor. If you look really carefully here in the defense stat, or in the top right here, armor points 205 million. Now this would mean that if there was King Killer on things in the target, which there are, they would shoot at the flagship. Generally, this is an indication, like when there's cases with missiles having King Killer, that you should put evade on that flagship. I'm not doing that. Why? Because I'm shooting down every incoming missile. If I'm shooting down every missile with Gales, which is funny to say by the way, if I'm shooting down every missile, I don't care if they're shooting at ship 1, if they're going to miss whatsoever. The only reason evade is helpful is if things are actually hitting you. If it's not hitting you, you don't need evade. And also Billy was using things like Agility System 4 for evade, which is cool, except it does the same exact stuff as Guidance Scrambler 3, and Guidance Scrambler 3 just has a lower build time and isn't limited, so why not just use that one? So that's my thoughts on evade. No reason to build the flagship any differently than your regular ships. If you have 2 Gale ships and then 3 damage ships, I don't care what the composition between those ones are. I came into the raid with 2 Gale regular and 2 damage regular. I wanted a 3rd damage ship just to get through the targets more quickly, so I built the flag as a damage ship. Some people actually went ahead and built a 3rd Gale ship, which I'm not entirely opposed to. It could work. I just see diminishing returns as you continue to add on more and more Gales. If I'm already shooting down 99% of the stuff, I only take 1% less damage by adding on Gale, by shooting down the last 1% of Gales, give or take. So that's why I didn't do 3 evade ships, and to be honest, even with just 1, I can still complete the targets, so I think 2 is likely more than enough, and the 3rd ship would just help, 3rd damage ship would just help get through the targets more quickly, which is what I'm doing. Now, I also wanted to talk about armors, because, well, I'm not changing my armors from just the standard 2 corrosive to missile. A bunch of other people are using D5 EVs, which is cool if that works for you. My problem with D5 EVs is I would need to refit, and I don't want to spend an extra day, 2 days, whatever, per ship refitting from what I already have and what already works. I don't want to refit onto D5 EVs, which might work better, but maybe might not. So that's why I'm not doing that. But again, if what you have, it works best for you, then sure, by all means, go for it. The other thing is that I'm autoing, which means that if I go into the evade armor and I look at that, having the evade or the D5 EV giving me 7% combat speed doesn't do anything. I don't really care. I don't care at all, in fact, about the 7% combat speed because I'm autoing with this fleet basically every time. I'm not driving 50 sets, 2 targets per set. I'm not driving 100 of these targets ever. When the TLC comes out, I'm going to auto it. When these become a Forsaken Mission target, I'm going to auto it. If you play differently and want to get the best results driving every target, you might want to consider D5 EV. Now, the other thing, and we'll actually see this with the Hierophant targets, is that D5 EV is not always the best evade armor. You can see it gives 12.4% evade, and then the D5E also gives 12.4% evade. It doesn't have the combat speed stuff, but if you're autoing, you don't care about that. And the other advantage here is that notice the repair duration is instant for D5E, whereas the D5EV is 8 minutes. If you use 4, 5, or 6, because you actually can use more than 4, I'll show you how, D5 EV armors, you're taking your repair time from your ship for being an hour or 2 base, or maybe it's 3 hours base. You're bringing that up, and actually I'll show you here at the very bottom. It's under the miscellaneous for the ship. So the repair time here is 3 hours just for a base ship, hour and a half in raid obviously. If I use a D5 EV armor, it brings it up to, well, more than that. And this is how you can get it on the heavy armor slots, by the way. It's a glitch, so don't tell Kixeye. But if you are using the multi-place mode, you can actually place it into an unlocked armor slot at U3. It only works in refit mode, obviously, here. It doesn't work in the X1 because I don't have the X1. But you can see that the repair time did go from, 3 hours up to 3 hours and 40 minutes. So you're adding on something, and it negatively affects a metric that I call repair efficiency, which is how many armor points can you repair in a given unit time. So that's why I'm not using D5 EV. I'm not driving, I don't like added repair time, and most of all, I can't do the added refit time, and I don't want to recommend to all of you to refit stuff on here that I don't know if it works better than that or not. So for that reason, that's my Worldeater build and my Worldeater thoughts. Let's now go ahead and shift into talking about the Hierophant, which is pretty interesting. If you are subscribed to the channel, which is the only way to see all my videos because I don't always post all of them to Facebook, Discord, etc., you'll notice that I didn't actually make any Hierophant videos. And that's because, well, I only drove 1 target. I drove the 1200, got really low repair time, and then tried autoing and found out that autoing was perfectly fine. So there's no reason to drive these targets, and to be honest, the Dreadnaught should not exist. We only have to use them to get the bonuses in the raid to get the full 2 million, which I don't really like in the first place, but I can't change it, so I just, do what I can here. And I've just been autoing the 1200s for 24 minutes and the 1201 for 16 minutes of repair. That's an insanely low repair time and allows me to get tokens for the Worldeaters, and using those Worldeaters lets me get tokens for this one to just, again, keep going forever if you can hit enough targets to get, the right amount of chests, etc. So I haven't had a reason to change from this one. Now, I did build the ship using tokens I saved, from the Forsaken mission, as, only a handful of those, actually. Most of those went towards the flagship, but tokens from Strike, etc. And I even got, 6 of the different D5E armors equipped onto this one, which is fantastic. I also got my weapons all built out for the extra ones I got at E1 or E2 that I didn't yet have on the ship, which again was pretty cool. I did get a few of the slightly more upgraded ones, although you'll notice basically everything else here is a common weapon. So that's what I've been using in the 1200 and the 1201 targets. It works fantastic. I just go in and I auto, and then I get fantastic results without even trying, which again is how I like to play the game when I have to hit 100 targets, because Lord knows I am not driving 100 targets every single week. That's just a little too much for me. If that's you, fantastic, more power to you. And I am using the same build I recommended from the start, with the only difference being the armors being D5Es, again for the reason I talked about in the Worldeater segment of no repair time, and I don't care about turn speed and combat speed if I am on auto. So there's my thoughts on the Hierophant. Now, I do want to briefly talk about the fact that if you go open up the raid store, you are not going to get any Hierophant fragments or Hierophant tokens whatsoever. I wish they'd add a search bar or split it out by tabs, how the Forsaken mission is and how old raid used to be, so I didn't have to have this massive scroll bar that I went and scrolled on trying to find something. Even clicking hide owned is not very helpful. But briefly, you can't get any of the Hierophant fragments, but what did I get in this raid? Well, I got all the top level tech, which is what I would recommend all caught up players do. If you're brand new and if you had trouble getting tech in this raid because you didn't have a Worldeater fleet or didn't have a Hierophant fleet, get Worldeater stuff and do your best to come into Strike 2 and Raid 2 and Raid 3 and Strike 3, etc. with a Worldeater fleet. Don't build Retaliators, don't build Bonesaws, don't build Agamemnons, don't build anything except the brand new stuff, which is the Worldeater and the Hierophant right now. That's what you should get, and that's what you should be building up. Avoid limited stuff if there is a decent non-limited replacement. If you have questions, find a good alliance and they'll get you pointed in the right direction. Now, I did not get any Worldeater upgrade kits because I have enough to bring these guys up to X1 with the token or with the kits I got from the TLC, as well as Raid 1, etc. So I didn't bother getting those. Of course, got the flagship. I've got that built. I had extra points, so I got the Hierophant Officer Enhancement chests, which we'll get to discussing officers in a second. Upgrade tokens for the flagship and regular ones to get from U3, U2-ish at the start of the raid to U3/X1-ish now. That actually has been very helpful in reducing my damage and a bunch of other stuff. Even had the extra 20 million-ish points to get the UAV enhancement chests, which have been okay. Nothing too crazy with those ones. By the way, if you didn't know, these enhancement chests have a ability kind of where there is a cap on how many of the uncommon weapons you have, and I think it's 40. Once you have 40, every additional one you open is guaranteed to be rare, epic, or legendary, and by the time you have 40 uncommons, 40 rares, every chest you open is guaranteed to be either epic or legendary. And if you have 40 of the uncommons, 40 of the rares, and 40 of the epics, every chest you open is guaranteed to be legendary. This means that in the third raid, if you get chests every single time, you're much more likely to get legendary in the third raid than the first one. The same is actually true for officers, but a different cap. Again, we'll get there momentarily. I also did manage to get 10 or 120 of the Oblivion Worldeater upgrade kits, which is enough to bring you up to X1. Flag will have the flag cores for Capital, which is different. By the way, if you didn't know, I do have an upgrade times sheet, which you can access in the description of all my YouTube videos, which shows the kits required for the normal ship, the flagship, as well as the Dreadnaught. So just keep that in mind. That's linked, again, totally for free in the description of all my YouTube videos. Going back to the prizes, there is one more I'd recommend getting if you have not got it yet, and that is actually the 2-day structure build token, which is in the tokens section, because, and again, I happen to have redeemed this one, or I happen to be at capacity, because we are expecting Outpost, I think it's 18, 19, 20, whatever it is. The next Outpost level will come in February, which is next month. If I'm guessing, I think is likely going to be in Conquest, which is the replacement for Bounty. So make sure you go in there with max structure build tokens so you can get your labs upgraded. Otherwise, you'll be having lower upgrade, or you'll be having much higher, I should say, upgrade times, refit times, build times for the next tier 14 worth of ships. I think we're on tier 14. Regardless, make sure you get this one if you haven't, and I hope you've been saving up 10 hours from Conquest as well. So that's the what to get in the raid section. Now at this point, I do want to switch to a recorded segment of going through and getting Bonesaw officer chests, because this will be interesting for talking about officers. And by the way, I actually recorded this video twice, if I didn't mention that. The first time I didn't have any audio. I figured the video is more useful if I'm talking in it. So here's the, voiceover, I should say, of what I already recorded of getting Bonesaw officer chests. Now I'm getting these because I think it's going to be useful in the Forsaken mission. We're going to use that instead of the Agamemnon. We're going to use the Bonesaw in the TLCs for the current Dreadnaught, the Hierophant. That's my expectation. I think there's even one next week or the week after. I don't look at the calendars because I think it has the 30th of February on that one. So anyway. And actually, I wish Kixeye would add a search tool to the prize list, because it's really hard to find the chests and where they actually are. So that's kind of annoying. But the nice thing is that they do actually have the multi-redeem function that I'm going to use here. So you can see I spent 40 million points all at once, which was really, really nice. And by the way, appreciate that quality of life feature. If you want a scroll bar in the raid, I would suggest it in the Kixeye suggestions Discord box, but they don't really seem to listen to those, so I guess I don't have any further ideas. Regardless, here is the Bonesaw officer chests, which I'm going to redeem and then open up. These do have a max cap. Look how easy that is. These do have a max cap of 3 per officer per legendary status. So let's go ahead and open them all up, and you're going to see that because I've already redeemed like 20 or 30 Bonesaw chests, I get almost all legendary from this one, and I get the legendary Captain, Thrakus, etc., which is the one I was after because I don't have that one yet, and that's the best for the Bonesaw. Now, I got these good ones because I maxed out the cap on the uncommons and the rares, etc., the 1 and 2 stars, the brown and silver ones, from the earlier Bonesaw events, and I only got these because I had extra points. Now, I'm bringing that up because I do want to discuss the officers for the current fleet, which is the Hierophant. So thanks previous me for recording that, and let's jump back to the Hierophant officers. If you take a look at the ship that I'm using right here, I have a 2-star Captain Hazred equipped right here. And I have this here even though I have 1 of each of the other gold officers. So let's jump to the stats on these, because I think it's pretty interesting and I haven't seen people talking about these yet at all, really. Now, there is currently no way to see which officers you have in the game. If you think there should be, I would literally just send a ticket to Kixeye asking them to check for you, because they can, same with the fragments for the Dreadnaughts, and if enough people ask Kixeye to check their account for them to see how much they have, which Kixeye can do on their end, they'll eventually realize that it's dumb and it will save them time if they add in that info to our screens. Regardless, I did manage to get a screenshot of the officers that I had here, so you can see there's the Captain, you can see that there's the Captain Hazred right there, the 2-star one that's what I have equipped. He can only go in slot 1, by the way. A second officer is unlocked at E5. I don't have that one yet. I'm E4, but I did get a gold one of this guy right here. I think that's Templar. He looks mean. I have a gold emo guy, and then I have a gold, like, Scourge-looking one. and I'm not using any of these gold ones. By the way, I got very lucky. A lot of people, at least the ones who I saw talking about it, which is some selection bias, but did not get a single gold officer despite opening 10 chests. I wish that Kixeye would treat the cap system differently, or at least make you aware that there's a cap system, because once you have 3 of any one officer version, you can't get any more of those and are therefore guaranteed to get a slightly better one, which is why I got almost all gold bonesaw ones compared to, the current selection of Hierophant officers. I got I got a mixed bag, but if I had all my uncommons and rares maxed out, I would have gotten only legendary. Now let's look at the stats for the captain right here. You can see it gives me 15% penetrative damage at the second tier, which is the one I have, 7.5% evade, and then combat speed. I'm using this one instead of the gold version of the Scourge chick right here, because 15% penetrative damage is what I get with the legendary. By the way, I bet you anything it's 7.5% for the rare one, not 8%. I think that's a rounding thing. But as you can see, 15% penetrative damage for the gold one, 3 stars, is the same as the 2-star captain. And the captain has to be in slot 1, it's by far the best. You definitely want to use this one if you have the legendary version. But the rare captain, it does the same penetrative damage as the guidance officer Barzy here. The Templar officer, again, really mean looking guy, same as the other one, same as the moderator. This gives me survival. Briefly, how much does 150k, because I think that's 150k, explosive survival help? Let's take a quick look at my survival calculator. As you can see, if I go from 1.2 million, which is basically where my Hierophant is right now, with no armors on there, I'm going to go from 1.2 to 1.35, add in 150k, I take 11% less damage, so my repair times will drop by 11%. And then if I had a bunch of armors already on there and was somehow at 1.6 million, and I added 150k, I would only gain a benefit of taking 8.5% less damage. So that's an interesting thought for you there, is how much does this help? In my case, if I did use the gold Templar officer right here, I would take 11% less damage, or less than a Steelhead's crew. And then the last one, the emo guy right here, which I wonder which community manager this is. Regardless, this gives me evade bonus, which is nice, but I have 10% evade from this one, whereas my captain that I have a 2-star of, in addition to the other benefits, gives me 7.5%. So I don't really see a good reason to get 10% evade when I can get 7.5% plus other things, and I don't care about turn speed whatsoever. So that's my thoughts on the officers. I would use a captain if you have it at almost any level. The second one I would use is the penetrative damage one, just to increase that more. I'll likely be using this one at E5. And the third one I would use is actually just the survival one, especially if you're running D5E or D5EV armors. And the one I would only use if I didn't have any others, or maybe had a gold one of this, and then just the 1-star ones of the other guys, is the last one right here, the navigation officer Kixeye. However you want to pronounce these words is up to you, for the very marginal evade bonus, and evade is simpler to understand than survival. Having 10% evade, assuming the enemy has 100% accuracy, will reduce the number of shots that hit you by 10%. So in other words, it does what it says it does. So there's my thoughts on officers and why I'm using what I'm using. Now, briefly, I do want to mention the one really big issue that I have with the current raid, which is the targets for the Hierophant. If I open that, and it's not what you're thinking it is, unless you had this issue too, if I open the locator and I click a target and I, go to the 1200, and I'm kind of on autopilot, I've been autoing a lot of stuff, I look around, maybe I want a 1201 instead, and then I hit something, maybe it's this target right here, I right click on this one. This could be anything. It could be a 1201, or I could accidentally click on the one in front of it that has the same shape and auto a level 1000 siege target that is recommended for the bonesaw and will completely kill your Hierophant for basically 0 results or 0 points, and give you a 10 coin repair bill, which is how my 10 coins from this event have been spent, because I hit the wrong target. I went into a siege version, which you can't even tell by looking at it basically, other than this maybe looks like the bonesaw target and things die instantly, and that's how I lost my, my fleet right here. That's annoying, Kixeye. I would whole lock these targets. I would lock the 1000 and 1001 to the bone saw. I would lock the 1200 to the Hierophant, just so you can't hit the wrong target. That's the biggest suggestion or biggest improvement that I have for you. Other than that, keep Raid 2 as autoable as Raid 1, and I'll definitely be happy. With that said, I want to give a huge thank you to the channel members whose names appear on the end screen now. You're helping make videos like this one, even the second recording of it, possible. And until next time, this is Derpy, signing out, helping you be a better pirate.